local nonprofit brand, and I'm on their board, so just I feel like I've seen them grow up, and it's Studio 23. They're in Scott's Edition, and they're a printmaking studio. And it was artists who built a space to make artists have a location. They could have equipment, and they could have communal engagement to get inspired. And they have through and through stood up to kind of the brand strategy that we worked on around. They really feel that like art is a path to making change in the world. And, you know, whether it was the beginning of COVID and they jumped all over mask making opportunities because their, you know, space that they had in Scott's Edition, they could do socially distanced sewing machines and get them to frontline workers, all the way into when we were on Monument Avenue and they were setting up, you know, free printmaking and putting up signs to explain, you know, kind of what the evolution of events that were happening. So that's super hyper local for those of you not in Richmond and unfamiliar. But it's a nonprofit brand that is, you know, doing what it set out to do in ways it had no idea it was going to be asked to do in this time period. So I just kind of start there and see where else y'all have come up with.
Yeah, I think there's just tons of local businesses that are starting to really get this right and really get smart about how they interact, as well as businesses all over the country. We've got here, we're fortunate to have businesses like, you know, we don't think about every day, but it goes to Leah's focus on B2B, Colonial Web, which is the largest heating and building systems installer in the area, and they have an incredible commitment to workforce development. They're providing training programs to young people who don't really have a good path to a career through any other resource, as well as significantly partnering with Reynolds Community College to afford those same kind of opportunities for people to be able to have productive and high-paying jobs, and it is part of their cultural fabric. I think we've got all kinds of really interesting tapestry of smaller retailers who are growing to serve us in interesting ways, from ZZQ, which is started by an architect, Chris Fultz, who really cares about Texas-style barbecue cuisine, but also cares about building an environment where he can pay his people more than average, and where he can treat his customers in a certain way. You see the same thing with Manny Mendez over at Cuba Cuba and other locals. And then there are big companies that are not the Apple or Amazon or Patagonia, but I think right in our hometown. I'm going to mention a controversial one with full disclosure that they're a client of ours. But if you haven't been paying attention to the significant shift towards sustainability of Dominion Energy, then you're really missing out. This is a company that recently abandoned their Atlantic Coast pipeline. They have launched the largest installation of offshore wind farms in America off the coast of Virginia Beach. They've risen up to be #3 in solar energy for energy providers in the US, and even partnering with Smithfield Foods so that they can recapture the methane that is a byproduct of animal waste and actually use it for energy. And methane has 25 times the carbon impact or the greenhouse impact of carbon. So we are seeing more companies that are not just talking the talk, they're walking the walk. And I think that's what we need to see.
Yeah, I think you stumped me there, Andrew. And as I was reflecting on things that come to mind right off are definitely nonprofit, but in our community, something that I've seen is really visible, great partnership, great cause, and really have aligned with brands and individuals is the Cameron Gallagher Foundation and all the wonderful work they've done to drive awareness around depression and all those related factors that are even so important right now as we're living in this pandemic. But I definitely just look around our own backyard of how nonprofits have made a difference. And for me, also Feed More is one that comes to mind that has done a great job of giving back, but really partnering with major brands and companies for a cause-driven benefit.
Can I add one thing in here? And hearing both of you talk just like takes it up that level. So many companies have the values and the ideas and they want to be doing the work, but they have not figured out how to connect their value-based mission to their brand's product or service. And I would say that's something we see over and over again, helping brands, whether it's B2B or B2C, try and clarify and be able to connect that to their core product. And that's where the conversation around, where does brand live in digital? Like, it can become a super powerful tool for companies, even as they're defining how they're connecting their brands to these bigger causes, to be able to just say it succinctly online or in the business meeting or when they're considering the partnership with the other brand that has the same alignment. So I just kind of wanted to bubble it up because it is something I think all see as such an opportunity for companies to be doing, but it can be hard to really define in a way where you aren't talking about yourself and you're talking about that cause that is the other, that is the movement you're trying to go towards.
Absolutely.
Leah, what I think is interesting is that part of the reason I think businesses are not connecting that conviction of theirs for how they set themselves apart in the world and how they act responsibly with all of the activities that they have going on online and things is they think they have to add stuff. And the truth is they need to subtract stuff more.
That's right.
They created not a position online, but every possible position online. And they're going after every possible consumer with every possible message. And, you look at a local company like CarMax, I say local, obviously it's a global company based here in Richmond. And they have very impressive programs for cause-related marketing and other things, but they get lost in all of the other things that are going on. And when you think about a company like Patagonia, it's a very simple, clear focus. They don't try and cover too much ground. And what we remember are those that really don't have that many things that they want to be famous for. It makes it easier to do the tactics. It makes it easier to get it through the consumer, and it actually makes the brand much stronger in the end.
I think what happens sometimes is we just lose sight. As a company, we all have our individual mission and things, whether it's goals, and it really gets down to tactical execution. And sometimes it's more about the short term and less about the long term. So if we're so focused on a product and e-commerce and a sale, do we forget about, well, this is our bigger mission purpose? And sometimes, the whole brand thing, I mean, let's face it, it gets to be, a lot of people are skeptical. It's like, well, that's fluffy. That's, how do you explain your brand? But at the end of the day, it's really got to be that centralized belief that everyone rallies behind and ingrains it into the culture. And hopefully at that point, it starts to naturally show. But as long as we operate in silos, and I think all of us would probably attest that within our work experience, we've been in organizations where digital is here, social is there, marketing is here, communications, PR. It just gets to be so decentralized that we lose, what's our core purpose? What's our mission? What are we trying to set out to do? So once we're in better alignment, and hopefully that's what the future is that we figure out how to better align when it comes to driving what it is we're trying to accomplish for the end consumer.
Main takeaway was addition by subtraction. I think, Kelly, you said people are trying to pile in too much and make it more complicated than it needs to be. I love that. And I love those examples. And so since I was the one that teed up the question, I had to pick my own brain and think of a local example I could share as well. And the one I think, Gordon, you mentioned Feed More. One company that I hear aligning themselves very closely with that mission is the local Midas franchise, which I have no connection to at all, but it's just tires and brake pads is my understanding, but like they align themselves with feeding hungry kids, oil change or something. I forget what the offer is, but like that's what I think about them as, not as tires and brake pads. So I think it's a really cool alignment there.
That's actually a great example. And Mark Smith, who runs that, really takes it to heart that he is doing more than just fixing your brake pads.